This week we got Tim Cook. Tim Cook's a very good friend of mine, good spring salmon fisherman. He's a good summer fisherman too. Tim's done them for years. I'm looking around, there's all kinds of new faces here, guys I've never seen before, which is nice to see. Tim's going to touch on the basics of spring salmon fishing and the do's and don'ts, and we'll go from there. Tim?
Thanks for coming out today. I'm sure everybody's going a little tired of this weather as well as I. I will not predict today when we're going to start fishing. We'll leave Joel because we won't. I know when the ice is gone though, I will be out there. I'm going to kind of do this as a basic because there's probably some new guys here and there's probably some stuff that, you know, the older guys are like, yeah, I know all that. So I'm going to go through everything that I know about spring fishing and kind of tell you how we do things on our boat. And again, you don't have to do it that way, but it's through trials and tribulations we found out what works for us. Everybody's boat's different, but a lot of these things will, if you pay attention and you start implementing them, you will start to improve your catches. There's some guys out here that, you know, during the middle of summer, I'll see somewhere at a boat ramp or something, I'll say, hey, thanks for that, because, you know, that helped. So there might be some things in here you pick up and might not, but it's nice to get out of the house and do some of it. So I treat this thing as, I have some handouts up there too, if you guys want to grab them, and I'll kind of go through. I've got an outline of what I cover. I didn't realize we'd have this many guys, so I only printed off like 30. And then there's also a log sheet that we use. We'll cover later on as I speak that how we gather a lot of our data, and this is very valuable stuff. Do not discount this. This is very important. I have to put the specs on here to read. All right, so I cover it like the when, the where, and then the how. The when is obviously any time after ice out. You got to be careful though, guys. Pay attention to your surroundings and stuff. I've been in some pretty hairy conditions out there with ice still Canadian side, winds shifting, moving around or whatever. Be careful. It's better to be safe than sorry out there because you can get into a lot of trouble. And I've been there, so word of advice. Actually, your first 2 to 4 weeks, once that ice clears, is the best fishing in this lower lake. After that month, after that ice goes out and that water turns, you know, your chances of catching fish consistently they're going to go down. And what's nice about the spring fishing is all the boats really have an equal shot at this. You're fishing in shallow water. You know, usually 6, 8, 10 feet you're starting, and you know, everybody just needs to be able to throw out a couple rods. You can long line stuff and you can catch these fish. It's not that bad. One thing I'd like to point out is, especially in the spring, you don't want to be the guy calling the bait store asking for the report. These guys, you're always a day late and $1 short, man, because someone else is out there doing their work and finding these fish. You want to be careful, but you want to be the guy getting the experience of catching these fish first. And then you know what's going on with the spring fishery. And the fish are moving, they're moving around all the time. If you call here, or you heard your buddy caught him in Lexington and he was south down by the condos or something, and you go the next day, or this is Thursday and you go there Saturday, chances are those fish aren't going to be there. They're moving around finding either temp, bait, whatever. They're on the move. Doesn't mean they'll move a long ways. It could be 2 miles, but they're going to usually find bait. I mean, it's no different than you. If you're driving up the shore, man, I'm getting hungry. You're going to stop at a party store, or restaurant, or something, and if that thing's closed, you're moving on. I'll cover the where. Usually your farthest ports south start producing first. Down at the lower end of the lake, all the way down, out in front of the beach even, we've caught fish. They come out of St. Clair River, go up the lower lake, you know, Lakeport, Lexington area. That's usually where you start hearing of some of these reports. I mean, you're going to hear it off the wall first. You know, Joel will be saying, oh, they're starting to get some fish, starting to get some fish. So not long after that, they're going to be into the lake. Can be in and around any of the lower lake harbors. I'm talking Port Huron, Lexington, Sanilac, Harbor Beach, both inside and outside of the harbors. We've run up there before where it's crappy weather here or tough winds or whatever, and we've gone over there just to fish the morning up in Harbor Beach and fished inside of the harbor and caught fish. So you don't have to be, you know, running way out deep or whatever. I mean, that's a pretty confined, there's a lot of space there, but it's still a pretty confined area you're fishing in. One of the things you want to first start looking for is your warmer water. Even 3 to 4 degrees difference can make a difference. I mean, if you're fishing in 34, 34, 34, and then all of a sudden you find something that's 38, that's probably where you want to start. The warmer you can get, the better off you are. Pay attention to your NOAA charts that they have on the internet that show the surface temps, because they'll kind of show this warm water or the warmest areas, and then you could at least take a stab at where you want to start. And obviously, when I'm talking warmer water, the warmer the water when it warms up, the better the action gets. So you're looking really, the fish really start to get active when it's about 40. And you'll find that a lot of times that water is warming up as you sit there during the day, because you're really only checking temps on the surface. So if you're trolling, you could start in the morning, you might be trolling as 34, 35, and then that water can actually in the shallows warm up, you know, 5 degrees by the end of the day. And that's when a lot of the times the fish will turn on in the middle of the day. So be patient, sit out there. There's times, and actually Joel was with me once, where we didn't have a bite till 11 o'clock in the morning. We ended up with like 20 cohos in like less than 2 hours. So if you find them, you know, it's usually when the water's warming like that, you're going to start finding the cohos and the steelhead and stuff. But there can be kings in there too. So pay close attention to your surroundings, because again, these fish are on the move. They'll be on the move to find warmer water and bait. So pay attention to what's going on here. Diving birds, stuff like that. You can see fish surfacing a lot, and you can actually see bait piles sometimes where the fish are in the shallows chasing the bait, and you'll see them surfacing, and you can see the bait actually like jumping out of the water sometimes ahead of them. Those are the things you got to pay attention to. I've been up to Harbor Beach, trolled, and we caught a few fish or whatever, and when we were leaving port in the morning, the seagulls and stuff were diving off the rocks, and I'm like, well, they're really active this morning, you know. So we come back and it's more the middle of the day, it's more like 11, 12 o'clock. Let's troll by the harbor. Well, those seagulls are still there pounding the water. Well, it was chock full of bait. So we trolled through there and we made 3 or 4 passes, and it was just loaded with coho and steelhead up there surfacing off all those baits. So pay attention to what's going on around you. It's the littlest things that are going to help you improve your catch. A lot of the bait that we see in these spring salmon, at first, maybe 5, 6 years ago, you were seeing a lot of empty stomachs. You go to clean the fish or whatever, and they're starting to turn. I don't think they'll ever turn. I mean, they want alewives, but we've been catching the last 2, 3, 4 years a lot of kings with minnows and smelt in their bellies. So they will eat that stuff. So again, pay attention Pay attention to the bait. And I mean, there's been a couple times where they're puking up big smelt right on the deck as soon as they hit the deck. I would pay close attention to fish in temp over clarity. These active feeding fish, and you'll see them all the time around this bait, you know, in the shallows. Again, pay attention to what's going on around you. Many times also we find crayfish in lake trout, browns, and steelhead. So, as well as everybody that's probably caught lake trout sees gobies in them all the time, but the crayfish obviously are going to be living around the rocks, right guys? So it kind of tells you where you might find some of these fish. And I personally think, I know this winter's been a bitch and there's been a lot of snow and ice and stuff, but my records show winters like that always lead to a better spring fishery. I mean, when this stuff starts to melt, these creek beds and the mouths that lead out into the water are going to be loaded with microorganisms and stuff that will hold these bait. And I think we're going to have a good spring. Once it finally breaks, I think we're going to have a really good spring. Look for structure. A lot of rocks, reefs, shoals. That'll hold bait as well. You know, south of Sanilac there's a couple shoals there with by the high banks that have been known to. That's where I've seen a lot of this bait and the fish porpoising and chasing bait around. We start in shallow water, as shallow as 6 to 8 feet deep. But you got to pay attention to what you're putting out there as a spread when you're in 6 or 8 feet. We start with all body baits. Then we'll start introducing some spoons on some lead core or copper, as well as, you know, dipsies and stuff. So pay attention to what you're putting out there. Most of your body baits, they dive probably 5 to 9 feet, a standard bill body bait. So if you start approaching any less than that, you're going to get a lot of snag and bottom. Not that that's a bad thing. It's a pain in the ass to be fishing like that, but it can be very productive when those baits are digging on the bottom. Our favorite depth is probably about 12 to 15 feet, because most of your baits that you're producing or that you're running in your spread is in the middle of the strike zone. And I mean, most of these fish will be cruising along the bottom. I mean, some will be, the steelhead and the coals will be up on the top, but most of the fish will be in the middle of that strike zone. And so if you're in 12, 15 feet, that body bait's running right in the middle. And that's usually right in front of them or up above them. We have caught nice catches of spring salmon anywhere from 6 to 40 foot deep though. So you got to pay attention to water clarity. How we got onto some of these fish in a little deeper water is water clarity. You know, you go out there after you've had a big blow or whatever, and the water is just, I mean, it's brown. And you can look out and you see that break. We've shifted offshore and just cruised in and out of that break. And run the same program. We're not running any deeper or anything like that, but those fish are in that cleaner, a little bit cleaner water. Outside of bait, water clarity is probably the most important single item to look for. If water's too clear, fish will be spooky and they'll run off to the sides and maybe not bite at all. If it's cloudy, they can't see the bait easily. If this is the case, they try to step out more, like I'm talking about, and fish in that break line. I'm talking about a teal green tint. You want to put your bait out. You don't want to see that bait running as far as you can see, you know, as far as you can see in water, drifting back. You want to lose it probably 10 to 15 feet behind the boat or so. There's almost all the time in the spring we'll run and we'll stop we'll actually check out that water clarity. We might pass over a spot that we've caught fish there numerous times, year after year, but we're trying to find something that is better water clarity. And again, it's like a green. It's not dark. It's something you have to learn how to judge yourself. Now, anybody got any questions? Just ask questions as we go, guys. And I'll be more than happy to answer, or you can. I'll be hanging around after it's done too, and we can talk about that. Or if you want to talk about summer stuff as well, we do a lot of traveling around Lake Michigan, Erie, Ontario, so pretty well versed in summer fishing as well. So we can give.
When you're running that shallow and that, like you said, 6 to 8 foot of water, how small of bill stuff are you running? Like the little Challenger, those Challengers with those really small bills on them?
Yeah.
Something like that. Keep track
We don't
of
use any size. We don't use big baits at all. Try to mimic. This fishery has changed so much. Like I said, these fish used to eat alewives.
just the size of the bill as far
Yep.
as, just
Yes.
to keep it out of the mud.
Yep. You want something that's, the small Challengers are good, the small Rapalas we've used. I've got a box here of some sample baits that we run. Probably about 3 years ago, we were running a lot of rattle traps even. The rattle traps caught us a lot of fish, but the hooks are so damn small, you gotta really be careful reeling these fish in. But, yeah, something with a small bill. The Smith whips work good. We don't like big baits. I mean, a bomber is like, it's like gigantic for us. Yeah.
Bill size is what I was
Yeah.
more interested in.
Yeah, it's anything small. Most of those baits won't run deeper than like 8-9 feet. So,
I've seen some that are, say right on them, this bait runs 12 to 15.
yeah, we don't even try running stuff like that in there.
What speed you going at?
Speed, we go usually 2 to 2.5. In the spring, and it'll start that way. You can go even slower and catch fish. These fish, as cold as this has been, and they're going to be very lethargic at first. If you can get your boat down to 1.5, that could be even better. Most of these baits, a body bait will flip at about 2.5. And there's a lot of times in their spread, and you can kind of watch that. Some of the baits that we use, when you're running them out the side and you're just long lining, you'll look, and on a really, really calm day, and you can see it every once in a while right up on the surface, and it's like struggling to stay upright. So the faster you go, the more chance they're going to have to flip over. You really want to, it's all about control, and I'll talk a little bit about that, but we'll talk about some bags. That's probably one of the most important things on your boat to get some boat control.
How long are you running behind the boat?
This is basically this is exactly what we start with. We go 75, 80 feet on the port side and 120 feet back on the starboard side. The easiest way to remember it, like the captain is the star of the boat. He's on the starboard side, he's the strong guy, he's the know-it-all, so we'll run that side the longest, and then we'll run the other side shorter. We started doing this probably 6 years ago or so. Originally, we ran like everybody else. We'd run the lines on the outside way back, and then the next one like not quite so far back, and then the next one a little shorter. But we found that this right here is the best way to actually record and know exactly what's going on your boat. If you know that every line that I put out on this side is 80 feet back, and every line on this side is 120 feet back, then when you start getting bites and you start logging this stuff like I'm talking about, you're going to see what's producing. Where all of a sudden you get one that hit on 150 or 200 back over here and 110 over here, it's scattered. Everything you're gaining is scattered. This is controlled. We fish very controlled, so that everything is the same. And the guys know it. Anybody putting a bait on this side, it's 80 feet. Anybody putting a bait on this side is 120 feet. There's no need to ask anymore. And again, it's done for a purpose, because when the fish bites on an outer board or whatever and releases, you want him to be able to have room because of your natural spread, your natural angle pulling behind the planer, and work his way towards the center of the boat. And I'll talk a little bit more about this as we go. Anybody else got a question while I'm
What's your
going?
spacing between your boards?
You need a lot of room to run something like this. We'll run probably anywhere from 20 to 30 feet apart. So, we'll talk a little bit about what I call the how. Any size boat can be used to catch salmon and trout in the spring. How things are laid out on your boat and presented to the fish is what makes the difference. What I highly recommend is drift bags. This, for two reasons. It helps your engine idle. It's hard on a boat motor to be idling all the time. So if you throw out a drift bag, then obviously to get at a certain speed, it's going to want to kill you. So to get at a certain speed, you can pick up more RPMs, and it's a little easier on your motor. It'll make it last a little longer. And then also, if you picture your boat, it's 8.5 foot wide or 10 foot wide, whatever you have. If you throw out a drift bag, like a 3-foot drift bag on each side of that thing, now you're about 16 foot wide if you're a 10-foot beam, and it's taken that much stability in rough water out, and you will not believe the difference in the ride you will get while you're trolling. To me, this was probably the best thing that we started doing right there, was with the drift bags. This happens to be a pair I use on my boat, and they're made by Amish outfitters. These are not really tied up properly because I used them last time as a drift sock over at Simcoe, but I can show you what I'm talking about here. So you tie this, the closer you can get this bag to the middle of the boat, the more comfortable it's going to be to fish and the more control you're going to have. So this dock line will mount to a cleat somewhere ahead of your windshield usually. There's usually a cleat up there. So rig this like that, tie a knot where you want this to be in the water so that when you put it in the water, this bag is near the middle of your boat. So you determine this length here, then you tie this knot off. And again, this one isn't tied like I want to show, but then your rope runs all the way through here, like so, and it ties off on the back knot. So you got a loose tag line that's running out here. So when you're fishing, you're going to throw this, you're going to hook it on the front, and it's a lot easier if you hook it on before you leave the dock, guys, because if she's bouncy out there, you got to climb up front and do it. But so now you got this tag line out the back, you throw the bag in, you get it to where the bag will deploy, bring your line in and wrap it around a rear cleat back there. And this will help you a lot. Then when it's time to go, you pull your lines or whatever, and then if you just put the boat in neutral or back up just a touch, you can pull on the back side of this rope like this, dump the bag forward, and then you can roll it up and put it away. If you don't do this and you only tied the front, or you didn't tie your rope on the back, you're going to have problems because it's going to go under your boat, it's going to get in your prop, whatnot. But if you do this in this manner, it'll work wonders for you. This bag, my boat's a 24 and I'm fishing, I don't know, it's about a 3.5 to 42 inch or 36 to 42 inch bag or whatever, and it slows us down. I can crawl like 1 mile an hour with my boat.
You don't have any problem with burst floating up that slow?
No, they'll pull. I mean, we're fishing walleyes and stuff all the time with smaller collars and stuff. They'll pull. Any questions about this? Because this is a highly recommended.
You throw that bag in there, how do you grab that tag line? You got a hook or something, or, because that's going to be down?
No, it's going to pull right. It's going to pull. This is going to be tense or tight, taut.
It's going to be tight to the back cleat.
Yeah, the back cleat.
You're saying when you throw it in, it's already tied to the back?
Tie it off before you throw it in.
You only do it once.
That's what I've seen weird. So the front and the back are already tied off.
Or if not, you better make sure the dude that's handling it's got a hold of it, because. We've actually had one once where we were on Lake Michigan, we had to come into port and do it in harbors, crawl, swim under the boat and do it, so just take it fair warning. But this, I'm telling you, you will gain a lot of boat control, and it'll be a much more comfortable ride.
You usually use two of them?
Two of them, one on each side. If you put one on one side, it's gonna be pulling like hell on you all day long. One on each side. Now, it's different if you're a dual motor boat. I have a single screw, but if you're a dual motor boat, it just depends on the way the currents are going on which bag and which motor you want to run and stuff. So it's a little different, but I'm talking probably most of us have single screws. This works tremendously for, I'm talking little boats, little 18-foot aluminums or whatever. It's a must. It will help a lot.
You throw those out before you set your rods out then? Is that what you
No,
do?
I don't. I put them out after only because when you're running body baits and you're trolling slow anyway, and that you throw this out until you can get your speed adjusted to what you want, it takes forever to feed these baits down the line. I want to get fishing. I'll adjust the boat speed in a minute. Let me get my baits out away from the boat. So, if you're trolling and when you first set down, sometimes it takes a while for the boat to slow down. You might be going 3 or whatever, or high 2s, but I'd rather get my baits, a few of the baits out anyway, 2 or 3 aside, and then I'll put them in. But I don't put them in until after we start, just for that reason. That's the only reason. Now we're going to talk about planer boards. This is the best way. It's a must really in the spring to be more productive, is some type of planer board system. Everybody know planer boards and what they're all about. The best way to present your baits is by using these boards. There are 2 types of boards which you can use, and there's advantages and disadvantages to each. There's the big boards, which are hanging on the wall up there. There's numerous boards you can use. There's doubles, triples, otter boats, the whole 9 yards. You need a mast to run those. So that's a slight disadvantage because, that's another cost there. But personally, I like big boards. Yeah. I like the big boards in calm water, because as soon as that fish releases that off of the line, it's you and the fish. You don't have to battle an inline board or whatever. It's you and the fish from the whole fight, the whole bite that goes on right off the bat. It's you and the fish. And they're also easier for me to read your rod tips. Like a spread like this, this is a typical, like if you were running 3 boards out aside, your farthest rod out would be the straightest one. The next one would be this guy, and then the next one would be that guy. They kind of drop as they go like this. If you have to have a way to slightly differentiate these, because you're going to get fish and rods are going to be bouncing and snapping on each other. And with the bigger boards though, when your line is out there trolling, you really want to be able to read these rod tips, because some of these little 2-pound cohos and 1.5-pound cohos, you really got to be on your A game to see some of that stuff going on. And there's nothing worse than pulling a 1.5-pound fish behind you, destroying your spread. So the easiest way for me to read them, and I can read them small boards too, but is big boards and all your rods are the same. That helps a lot too, where every tip is loaded the same. Usually what you'll see as you're trolling is you'll see these rods going like this and coming back, and the waves coming back, and So if when you see a rod that's bent like this and all the other rods are coming back, it's loaded with something. Could be weeds, but it's usually a fish. So that's when you can release those. The disadvantages of big boards, rough water. I don't know how many times I've been out my boat, other guys' boats, whatever. They'll flip a big board in the rough water and they'll dive down, and man, you got a mess on your hands. I mean, you're stripping a whole side and you can lose a lot of gear. They've actually dug down all the way down to the bottom and snapped the line off on us before, so that's one disadvantage. They're harder to set your lines on a windy day. So we use numerous kinds of releases, and you guys can look at them after we're done here. These Larvics, and a fish hits, and you don't happen to see that hit. You'll look out there the next time, and this thing will be hanging like this. These are really easy to see. When we use, depending on wave conditions and how much pressure you need on these, we go all the way up to the big offshores too. But it's harder in the wind to send these things down the line, because especially a clip like this, in the wind they want to like flip. They keep flipping around the line, and then they'll get wrapped on there, and then you got to pull the whole spread in. So that's why I'm saying big boards, light winds, then you can fight just you and the fish. But if it gets windy, relatively windy, I'd fish the small boards over them any day.
When you hook your releases on, do you twist the line or anything? I've seen guys do a lot of different things.
No, I want them to come off easy. I'd rather, even if I get a false strike or whatever, I'd rather reel that in and reset it than be battling on a small fish that I can't get to release out there on the end. I don't want to make it too hard for them to release. I mean,
Well, I've heard guys say that if you twist the line, it releases easier. I've seen guys do all kinds of crazy things.
yeah, you just got to be really. I guess it's a personal preference. I don't like it. One other disadvantage is if you got a hot bait in your spread and you want to keep that in that spot, then you've got to pull your spread in. Let's say that bait, your hot bait that took 3 bites already that day, is on the outside of your spread. You can't get that back to the outside of your spread without pulling everything in and then sending it back out. So it's time consuming, and you've just caught a fish, and you really want your bait in the water. So it's like, it'll take you another 15-20 minutes, depending on what kind of skill set you guys got on the boat, to send everything back out and get it in line again. So it's got its advantages and disadvantages, and both of these do. Small boards. And this is why I say this with a small board. Rough water, I think these things get a lot more action than a big board. A big board, your line is taut all the way out to the edge of it, and you're not getting the jumping back and forth in the wave, because the board's taking it, but it's kind of being released smaller towards when you get to the boat. So these will outperform every wave. When you're out there in a 2-3 foot chop, these are coming up. You'll see them jump right out of the water. Jump like this and back and pulling back and stuff. And these things will really work a bait and give you a lot of action in rougher water. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Your hot bait location on this presentation is easier to get to the outside, or get it to reset where you want it. Again, we use the situation where your hot bait is on the outside. You can actually cheat. You don't have to cheat, but to make it easier, you can reel some of these lines in towards you. Start with your inside one first, pull it in a little tighter each one. Then you can send this way out down the middle. And once you've cleared all those boards on that side, go ahead and set your clicker again, and then this thing can drift. They'll drift all the way back outside of all those baits and come into that spread and be back where you wanted it. So these can be very effective too. But as we address this, I'll tell you the disadvantages. When the fish strikes, it's tougher to control. This board now, you're fighting the fish and this board ahead of this fish, let's say 80 to 100 feet. So now this fish is out there, and there's a good chance you guys are going to hook into some decent sized fish. 10-pound fish has the ability to take this thing underwater. Now, this thing's diving. He's jumping, this thing's diving, or it's taking it down, and he's 100 foot back. Now you've got no control. It's you to this board, that's all you feel. He's doing whatever he wants out here. So if he's jumping, running, whatever, he has every opportunity to get off. That's why these are a slight disadvantage as far as that goes. A little bit heavier rod and line helps a lot, so you can kind of put a little more pressure on them. And again, we see this happen all the time. You start summer fishing with this. I mean, we fish these inline boards with copper all the time. Big coppers. I'm talking 300-400 foot coppers. I mean, believe you me, a 25-pound king will take this like a bobber. And it's like you've got a very limited control. So, a very good chance of losing them. Small boards, it's very common. These don't always run alike. You might buy, okay, I'm going to go there, I'm going to set myself up, I'm going to buy 5 of these. And by the end of summer, they won't be running alike. This styrofoam in here can get loaded with water or whatever. This weight can shift a little bit in here. And all of a sudden, you got 4 of them running in line, and the one in the middle is running like 15 feet back. And all day you're going to go, I wonder if there's a fish on that line. And it's just the way they are. You try to learn what you got and pay attention as you set them out, but that's one of the downfalls of these. The other downfall is I'm not sure what these are going for now. I've got 5 full sets for each side of my boat, but this board alone is probably 30, around 30. So we rig them up. We don't like this board to move. If you allow this board to move and it can pull off of the release and this thing comes down like this, it's going to slide all the way down and smack your fish in the face. And it's going to be beating that fish up. There are ways to get around doing that. What works best for us is I want that board to stay where it's at. When that fish hits, I want it to stay where it's at. So we rig the front up with this OR18. So we're looking at that, that's another 15 bucks. And then this red clip on the back, that's another 6 bucks for one of those. So you're talking, you're at $50 a set, roughly. You can fish them with what comes with them, not a problem. But if you fish a lot, you're going to see why we've probably done this. So this set, how much does this set go for, Bobby?
$100 if my numbers there, about $100 a board.
$100 a board, so you got a couple $100. I've got 5 of these, and I can run 5 lines off each side. I've got 5 of these at $250 a side. So they're, if you rig them up like this, they're almost twice as expensive as that. But most of the time you go out there, it isn't those calm days, and you probably want to run these. There's these, and then the church boards as well. We fish church boards on the tournament boat, and I like those too.
Do you set up your church boards any different way as far as releases on them or anything, or you run them straight out of the package?
Well, we hook them up just like this.
You hook them just like that one too?
The church boards, you got a little bit more options with them. The front clip is like, it squeezes down like this. You can loop that around there a couple times, 2-3 times, and it will hold pretty good. They start to wear out real quick though when the line is that thick on them. And then we found that that'll start pulling off too. So, I mean, they're adjustable. They got a screw on them and spring loaded and stuff. And you can clamp Spring, summer, it doesn't matter. Those are your most aggressive fish. As far as production though, I would take, overall, I'd take a board rod any day than anything else on that boat in the spring. Got them kind of listed there. Producers' board rods are by far number one. You know, it's kind of misleading because obviously you're running more board rods than you are anything else, but still, they will outproduce even if you're not. Again, dipsies, mainly spoons, and then the rigger rods. Rigger rods in the spring, the only way I'm even putting a rigger rod in is if we're bored and we're not catching absolutely anything. Very, very, very few fish come off the riggers. I mean, those fish in the spring, and you're running all those motors over them and stuff, they're off to the sides. They're not down the middle.
Don't you even take your riggers off in the spring at times?
Yeah, we don't even want them in the way. I mean, they're just tangle monsters. I'm big on that, man. Tangles. Jeffrey knows I do not like tangles, man. We do whatever we can. And why I'm telling you a lot of this stuff is to prevent the tangles. There's nothing worse than downtime, guys. You're only going to get so many bites a day. And when you're sitting on the bottom of that boat trying to untangle a bunch of 120-foot lines that are out there, you're not being productive. Let me tell you. You put the spread out the way I'm talking about, and you get these body baits spread out, and you're dragging a pile of bait behind you that's 300 foot wide. I mean, you don't want, who wants to reduce themselves down to fishing like 10 feet wide behind your boat? And we don't, and I'm not kidding with the riggers. Sometimes in the spring we do not even put them on when we first start.
What pound test you use and how type line?
20, we use a lot of Andy tournament line. You go 20 pretty much across the boards. Now, later on in the summer when we go over to Lake Huron or Lake Michigan and the sea fleas get bad or whatever, we'll go to 25, 30 like on rigger lines or something like that when they get really a nightmare. But you can boat any fish around here on 20-pound test. And people talk like, oh, in the spring I put 12 or 15 on. I don't think you have to do that. I mean, we don't change our line. We run 20-pound year-round. So, as you look at this, part of the reason why you're doing what you're doing with your spread, you gotta think, if you were to look behind your boat in 3D, that your shallower body baits or your shallower running lures will be the furthest out. The closer you get to the boat, the deeper the bait's going to be running. So, and that's because if a fish hits an outside bait, you want to give him every opportunity to take it off of the release and walk above your whole spread and come to the back. And in the spring, that's the way it works most of the time because you're fishing 10 feet of water. It's not like summer where these fish can hit and go down and up and across. When they hit, they're swimming in the middle of a 10-foot water column and they're going to run out. So let them go. And backing up to these dipsies, when we catch these fish on these dipsies, when we're trolling with a dipsy, we kind of let the boat speed or the conditions dictate how much pressure we're going to put on that drag. We don't like tighten them right down because those fish, when they hit really hard and they're just shocking the hell out of that rod. So even if we're fishing rougher water and we do got to tighten them down a touch, the very first thing before we touch the handle, before we touch the reel, we back the drag off. Let the fish get away from the boat and fight a little bit. That's very important because they will shock it and they will hit it so hard. You don't want to grab the handle and then think you're doing that. The first thing you should think of is to hit that drag and let them go.
On your dipsies, what you can set out like in the spring on 3s or as far as out as you can get them?
Yep. Yeah, 3.5s. You know, I mean, you're talking, you're only letting them back so far, so you're not talking about a big difference. But yeah, again, the idea is what works? It's getting away, if you look at this, what's producing, it's everything that's away from the boat. I mean, yeah, these fish are aggressive, but they're away from the boat. It's not a rigger, they're not right behind the boat, they're off to the side.
Still leaving a ring on it, or taking the ring off?
We don't fish with the rings on ours, but I don't think it, in this condition, I don't think it makes a whole lot of difference. We just don't, we don't use them because it's another thing, it's like flopping around. The plastic snaps end up wearing off them and stuff, so. The only time we're using rings is on deep divers, you know, mag divers and stuff when we fish in the summer. That's the only time we're using rings. So, like I said, we start with body baits on everything except for the dipsies. As the fish start becoming more active and start biting, you know, some of these dipsies and whatnot, we introduce spoons into the spread. We have 0 Magnum spoons on the boat. We don't even fish Magnum spoons anymore. Again, I'm talking match the hatch, you're talking about the bait that we're seeing in the fish, we're talking all mini streaks to regular size, like a silver streak spoon or Dreamweavers or whatever. We don't use any Magnums. Now, I mean, people will debate me, they're using mags. I know Jay uses a lot of mags or whatever, and he catches a lot of fish, but I'm telling you what works for us in the spring. Now, obviously, you can't put the spoon on a mono and run it out there. It's going to be splashing around the top of your water. So you have to find a way to get it down. So again, inline sinkers, you can run a 4 to a 6 foot lead behind them. That works. And we do that in the summer for steelhead as well, and it's a very effective way. So don't discount that. And then there's lead core and copper. We run a ton of 2 and 3 color. We're into copper now. There's nothing wrong with lead core. We caught a lot of fish on lead core, but we do a lot of tournament fishing. The copper gets you to the same depth as, or half of the length of copper gets you to the same depth as, you know, twice as long on the lead core. So you're not out there as far. So if you do the math and you want to net every fish you got, you're reeling that fish half as far as you are with lead core. So again, our goal, trying to compete in tournaments, is get every fish to the boat, reel it the least amount of time that you can, or that you have to. So fish a lot of coppers. So you start with, you're going to have kind of a mixed spread at that time. You're going to have body baits. Let's say you're running five lines out this side. I'd probably start with maybe your 3 favorite body baits out, and then plop a couple of your coppers inside of that with some of your favorite spoons. Anybody got any questions?
Yeah,
No.
I got one. I was always under the assumption you had to run your body baits at different speeds than your spoon. You're saying
Nope.
it really doesn't matter?
No. See, a copper, spoons you used to run faster if you were running like all spoons. I think it's changed a lot. I mean, you may be able to use that analogy if you're using them on dipsies or riggers. But I think the copper and the lead actually slows some of that action down. And I mean, we produce evenly in a mixed spread between spoons and body baits. Yeah, definitely. When they start biting the spoons, you'll be weeding those body baits out, and by time the end of your fishing in spring, you might have 1 body bait out and all spoons. But you start all body baits, and then pay attention, again, what's going on. And the more you keep marking those fish on here, pretty soon, when you don't have nothing to do and you're sitting at home, you're going to be going like, wow, I'm starting to get a whole lot of fish on them spoons. So, pay attention. So, again, pay attention to your surroundings, servicing fish, feeding fish, birds, etc. These are all keys, what I think, to produce better catches. Again, be patient. Baits don't come in a flurry in the spring. They can, but most of the time they don't. It's pick and poke. Many times it's very slow. A couple years ago when we won the stakes, we were catching fish still at 1 o'clock when we were pulling lines. I mean, that bite can be, and it will be at first here, once the sun comes up and it's going to have to really be beating on that water, it'll be a midday bite. You'll be sorry you got to go home, really, once they start biting. As a general rule, dark water and dark days lean more towards oranges, chartreuses, and fire tigers. Those type of color patterns. Bright days, shinier, smaller baits. More of your chromes, your blue and chromes, black and chromes, stuff like that, shinier spoons. But remember, no matter what, when it comes to baits, when you're hot, you're hot. It's not always about washing every lure that's in your box. When you got hot baits and they've been hot since you've been started, if you're catching fish on a bait that has caught fish almost every trip that year, you're a fool if you put that thing away and try putting something else on that's in your box. Whatever you had going, when you're hot, man. That bait, we've got baits that by the end of the year, they're just so beat to hell because those are the ones catching the fish. Don't put those away and put something else that you haven't been using in that box. So, you're only going to get so many bites a day, and you want to make them count, right? Just remember, when those fish are biting baits like these, let's say like this rattle trap or whatever, those fish, those hooks are small, man, and they're not always hooked up that well. I mean, I'm constantly on our boat when we hook onto a fish and somebody's grabbing the rod and they're kind of getting on it a little too much. I'm like, small hooks, man. Remember, you got small hooks. You're better off to back a drag off and let that thing tire out there than you are trying to horse them in. You will lose a lot of fish that way. And again, even on a board bite, a big board bite, and he pulls it off with a release and he's running like crazy, there is nothing wrong with letting that drag back and letting him go out. Let him get out of your spread so he can't tangle anything. Out of your spread, and eventually he will come towards the center of your boat. I mean, it's just natural. It's just, it's physics. I mean, you're pulling behind that, eventually it's going to tow right behind you. Have your crew members help. Either move lines, clear lines, dip rods, whatever. Be prepared to bolt the fish when he comes in there. Don't everybody just be in awe, because if it's that dipsy bite, I mean, he's there. So one guy should be going to the reel, releasing the drag, getting the rod clear, and then someone else should be clearing lines or making a path for that fish to be netted. Because when they come to the boat, they're okay when they're fighting out here, and you're going like, wow, it feels heavy, but you know, I can't really tell. When they see that boat, it's a whole different ballgame, even in the spring. I mean, you get them 20, 30 foot back, and then all of a sudden they dive to the bottom or they dive sideways, they're going to be taking out rods. So those other guys on that boat should be clearing that path. Get the fish in. The more you open your area, the better chance you have of boating the fish. And remember again about the small hooks. Now we're going to talk about this log. We log every single bite we take when we're out on the water. Every single one, whether it's a miss or whatever. When you know it's a fish, we log every single one of them, because this is a valuable piece of information. I mean, our goal is we don't think it's a great day till you get 10 bites in a day. So you want to get every one of those to the boat, and all of a sudden you got, I've gone out 8 times or 10 times this year. Now you've got something to look at. By each time you get going, you got a little more. It's like, well, these spoons, we took 2 bites on this body bait, 100 back, this or that. So if you start recording that, now you've got a database you can go back to and say, wow, this bait's been pretty good, Maybe we should run 2 of them. we mark every fish on the GPS as we're trolling. As soon as the strike comes, we mark every one of those and start to look at that pattern and see what's going on. And again, it's not just a fish, we mark every bite. If numerous bites occur in a relatively small area, then you stay and keep working that area. We've won many times these tournaments that we win, we're fishing no more than a half-mile circle. I mean, we don't, if we get more than one, if it's only one bite, we keep trolling until we can get some kind of a pattern to see what we want to close in on. We call it closing the noose. So if you see us out there fishing and you troll by us and then you run back and you're going to go south or whatever and you see that boat still hovering over that same area, chances are we're on something. I mean, we're not going to troll and just keep trolling up the shore. We'll fish a local area for a little while, see how many bites we got, and if you only got 2 bites, we'll pick up and we're going to run. We're not going to troll up the shore. Pay attention to how your bites are coming, on what, and use that information to modify your spread. For example, your position in the spread, the bait style, the color, and the depth in the spread. So what I'm talking about there is, as you're trolling, don't always troll in a straight line, you know, kind of zig and zag and stuff. If you've got a board out and this bite keeps coming on an outside board on a turn, then you gotta adjust to that speed. If you're turning left and it's coming on a right board, out deep, they want that bait faster. So adjust your speeds according to what you're seeing, how your bites are coming. Working towards the end here. Now here's one. Stop telling your buddies on the radio that you're marking fish all over, but they just won't bite. The area under your boat, I mean, do the math, guys. The area under your boat where your fish finder is actually reading is about a 5 to 6 foot circle. If you think you've got that many fish swimming under your boat in the spring, I don't know, man, call me over, because it's not that way. It really isn't. Again, I mean, my records show that most of these bites come out there, and there's no way in hell my fish finder's seeing those fish. Not in the spring. You got to get out into some depth, some 60 foot or whatever. Those fish finders are getting a lot of false readings. I mean, that sonar's hitting that bottom and kicking, and it's like, there's not that many fish swimming under your boat. So, I mean, don't be that guy, because I mean, pretty soon, at least on our boat, we're all chuckling at it. So, but the best way is put the work in and learn your craft, and you'll be rewarded with better catches. If you start paying attention to this detail, you're going to start having better catches. I mean, you're going to have guys, and some of you might be those guys that fish 2-3 times a year, and you go out and you get upon some fish, and it's all luck or whatever. Everything we do is, again, controlled, and it's based off of data that we've been compiling for 8-10 years. And I mean, I used to stink as a spring fisherman, but once I started doing this stuff and started putting it all together, it's like, oh, I think I get it now. I mean, obviously there's been years where there's not many fish to catch, but I'm telling you, some of our catches in the last 3 or 4 years, I'd put against any of these guys that are going over in Lake Michigan and keep bragging up, you know, St. Joe's and all this. I've been to St. Joe's, but I tell you what, I've had better catches right here in the last 2-3 years than I ever had over there. I mean, these are some nice fish, and what's good is the different species you can get. I mean, you get the browns, you get the lake trout, and you get, you know, steelies in there, and the cohos, and some nice kings too. So I mean, everybody that thinks you got to drive all the way over to here, there's good fishing right in your backyard. You just got to put the work in. It's not easy. And I mean, probably 2 years ago, before we won the Salmon Stakes, we probably went out 5 times, 6 times, and caught no more than 3 fish a trip. And then all of a sudden, bang, we're there, and it's like, how quick can we get this going? And I mean, and then that's when you start using what you know here, and it's like, okay, they're biting now. now what do I gotta do? So, that's about all I got. Has anybody got any other questions?
You find that you're getting more walleyes out in the lake in the spring than in the past?
Yeah, it's spotty, like, there was the Candy Can, probably 2-3 years ago, and we were way up in Harbor Beach. I mean, we probably caught 10 walleyes in one day in the shallows. But we are picking some up. It's not out of the question to be throwing out there over 100 feet of water even, and you come up with a walleye almost every trip.
Yeah, we get a lot in KP in the summertime, August, like down 120 feet.
Yeah, I don't know, we're so busy with the summer salmon fishing, we don't really try to target anything like that. But I know they're there, there's no doubt they're there.
Your first few trips out, like you're not fishing a tournament, do you bother to get out crack of dawn, or do you wait till like 9, 10 o'clock and?
No matter what, we get when we're going, I get as many hours as we can.
You try to beat the sun up?
Yeah, I mean, the first couple trips, there's nothing wrong with, waiting until it's breaking day, because even last year, we were busting some sheet ice. It's probably about that thick we ran like 10 miles to get out of it. But, I mean, so it's nice to see what's going on.
See what that noise is.
And especially this spring, you're probably gonna see a lot of stuff rolling around out there in the water. So this year, I'd say probably more so than any. It's not gonna hurt you to wait a little longer in the day, because I think the water's gonna be cold. You never know. I mean, the things change so quick around here, and everything is relative. You're still looking for the same temperatures and this and that. It's all relative.
But you said something about like in the middle of the day, the water might start warming up
Yes.
a little bit like that.
Yeah.
Like you said, you're busting ice and you're
Yeah.
apparently in 32-degree water or less.
Absolutely. Yeah, those first few times, don't be discouraged. You're sitting here because you got cabin fever, right? Everybody's like, okay, as soon as she's out, I'm going. Well, don't be discouraged. Don't say, nothing there this year. They're there. You just gotta put all these things into place, and you gotta do the work. Like I said, I mean, it happens all the time. I mean, I talk to Joel too, and anybody catch anything? I'm not necessarily looking for where they were ever. Are there fish there? I don't care where they are. I'll do my work. I'll go find them. But if you're actually looking for a guy to help you, like, I was down by the condos, by the time you get there, man, it's going to be too late. I mean, I've had really good catches before salmon stakes and think you're going to like load up, and you can feel the wind changing like that night, and it's like you go there the next day where you just pounded the hell out of them the day before, and there's nothing there. So you just got to learn to be able to apply all that.
Ever run copper out your big boards?
Oh, yeah.
Or small board?
Nope, big boats.
They're short now.
Yeah. We run, when we get into the bigger coppers, we're running inlines, but the big boards, we're running 2s, 3s. We've run 5s and 7s off them. You start loading it up too much, and you can, they're not pulling the same. But, yeah, we run, a lot of copper.
Guys, Tim will stick around for questions. You can look at these boxes up there. Let's give him a round. Thanks, Tim.